Okay, good morning, everybody. I hope you're all right. I hope these assignments are not too difficult for you. Uh, Let me know if you're not able to access things. We're just going to finish up at least a couple more of these tabs on this Google Sheet for today. This will go over if you have categorical data, so like names, eye colors, not really quantitative data. How can you analyze that? So I'll show you how to do that with Excel. And then quantitative data. So if you had a bunch of numbers, um, what can you do with that? Um, we've already gone over a little bit of that with the dot plot and the correlation one, but we'll just finish up with this one. If you have trouble like getting a version that you can edit, some people were having trouble or were asking me to make it editable for them. I didn't want to do that just because I don't want one person coming in and changing it and then everybody else sees those changes. Uh, I was hoping for was that you'd all have your own copy. So if you just go to File, there should be a Make a Copy for you. And so if you get open the document, you can click Make a Copy and edit your own, and then submit your copy to me. That would be preferable. With all that said, I'm going to try to go through this carefully and try to say everything that I do so that hopefully you can follow along without any problem. Again, just follow along, do what I do, and that'll be it. After that, you guys can have a great spring break. Um, anyway, so here is, in fact, I'm going to click Make a Copy, and I'm just going to make it stats/algebra. And this is for the 20th. And that's how you make a copy. Then I'm going to go to, so if you've done one for last time and you've turned it in, uh, just make a copy of this one. Ignore the first two tables that we've already done and just come straight to categorical and categorical data. The first thing I'd like to show you is how you can sort the data. It's not that hard to do. Um, so we're going to be selecting ranges. So you can click and drag and select a range of cells. Just so you guys know, this works in other programs too. If you click one cell and then you click further down away from it and you hold shift and then you click another cell, you will select all the cells in between as though you had dragged. So shift works for that. So like if you start at the top of a column and you scroll all the way, you find the bottom of the column, you can hold shift and click it, the last cell, and you'll select the whole range in between. Alternatively, if you wanted individual cells, you can hold control and then you can select multiple controls or multiple cells that are not right next to each other. So that's something that holding control can do. And if you click off of that, you'll deselect. Anyway, that's just a helpful tip while we go through this. So what I want to do is I want to select all the data. So I'm going to start with this one, and then I'm going to scroll all the way down, hold shift, and click that red in the bottom right. So I have data filling up 1,000 rows, and we've got four columns of actual data. The ID just kind of numbers everybody. So I've got a bunch of data. So the first thing, if you click on this data up at the menu bar, you can hit sort range, and you can choose which column you want to sort by. So I'm going to sort by the last name, and just to start us off, and then after the last name I'll sort by the first name, which is typical. So I'm going to say, well, the last name is in column C, so I'm going to click, okay, column C, A to Z. Then I'm going to add another column, so after you've sorted all the A's and all the B's, we'll then sort them again further by column B, which is the first name, A to Z. So if I click sort, you can see that they're now arranged so that the last names go first with the A's, and then they're in alphabetical order after that, and the first names. So it just puts them in alphabetical order for you. So that's one way to organize a list in Excel. You have to select all the cells though, you can't just do the names, because then it will sort the names without the other data, and so everybody will be disconnected from the values of the data. But if you select everything, it moves the rows, like whole rows, you know, the data in every column of the row. So that's how you can alphabetize. So that's just a menu feature in Excel that you don't really have to compute anything. So that's one way to organize. Of course, you could sort them by different categories. So maybe I want to sort them by column D, their gender. Maybe I want to get so many males and so many females. Well, if I hit sort, then I've got all the females first, and then eventually, maybe halfway down, you'll get to all the males. That's one way. Or you could sort by their favorite color. I'm not going to do that one, but that's one thing you can do. Okay, so there's some commands for looking at data. One thing we can do, I think you could just select all the colors and click chart, and you probably get a pretty good pie chart. I'm going to go through some Excel formulas that you can use to do something similar to what just clicking the chart button would do, but they're a little bit more powerful, so you can do more things with them. So what I'm first going to do is just click to some cell at the right, and I'm going to say equals unique, and then I just have to select a range of values. So I'm going to come over to the left, I'm going to click the first color in column E, and then I'm going to scroll all the way down and hold shift and click the last color. And what I should get, and I've put an example data range up here, is from that column's second cell, E2, to E1001, because there's 1,000 pieces of data in each column. So that's all you got to do. You can close parentheses. I don't think you have to, but you just say equals unique, and then that range of colors. And if you press enter, it actually fills in other cells. You'll get a list of the colors that are in the first list, but with all duplicates removed. You'll get only the unique values that people have chosen. So those are all the colors that you have to choose from. You'll see green appears more than once, but this list will only have one value of green. So there you go. You can do the dot plot. You can click over here, and you can say equals count if you wanted to, and select the color, select the range. Again, you don't want that range changing, so you got to put dollar signs in front of both the letter G and the number, so that the row and column lock in place. And then after that, you can hit comma, and then I'm not going to put the dollar signs on this one. I'm going to click the green cell, whatever cell is in line in that row, and then I'll count, actually, I don't want to count in this list, I want to count in this list over here. So I'm going to change this to E2, or you could just select the list, and I'm going to go to E1001, and that should give me, here's the formula. I hope you guys can see this okay. Let me try to increase the zoom. I don't want to make it too big, but that's the formula I'm using. COUNTIF E2 to E1001, dollar signs in front of the letters and the numbers on both parts, comma, then just plain old G5 where I have green. If you do that, I see that 55 people like green, and if I fill down, you can see the numbers for everybody. I don't know that I'm going to do a dot plot for that one. I guess you could. I just want to see what it looks like. I'll put in O's or something, and then I'll do it that many times. Formula error. I don't know. Really? Well, whatever. I forget exactly how you do those ones. I thought that would work. Maybe it's too big of a number. Anyway, you don't need that. You know, dot plot's kind of not going to do well for that many dots. But you can do other things. So I'm actually going to select these numbers, and if you select them, you can cut. So I'm going to hit Control X, or you can go to Edit and just say cut, and then you see that it's in the dotted, the dashed border, so it means you've copied it to your clipboard. And I'm going to go one over, so I have 2 columns here. I want 2 columns, and then I'm going to paste here, so you can go to Edit, Paste, or Control V. It seems to make me want to Control V. And I've moved it over. The purpose being, I can see the total number of people who like these colors, and I'm going to go to this little button here, and I'm going to center a line. Looks better. But I can also do it by male and female. So I can see how many males like these colors and how many females. The way you can do that, very similar to what we did here, where we said COUNTIF, the range, and then look for green, or whatever that is. Very similar. We're going to say COUNTIFs, plural, because there's multiple ifs. So I can click, okay, what's the range? Well, $E2, $E$2, to $E$1001. That's my data range. I want to count if they're green, but I also only want to select that if they're green. It also has to pass the check that $D2, so I'm now looking at the gender column, to, oh, I need another dollar. $D$1001, so I'm now checking the gender range, but I'm checking for it to say male. So it has to only count males who like green. And if I press enter, you get 26. If I come over to the other range, I'm actually just going to copy all this. You could type it again. But if I come up to the formula bar and I copy the formula, Control A and Control C so I can copy it, Then I'm going to hit escape so that I can stop editing the formula. And if I click over here and I come into the formula bar of this cell and paste it, then all I have to do is change this male to female, because the formula is otherwise correct. And that'll tell me that 29 females chose the color green. And those should add to 55. That's good. Once you get those, you can select them both and do the fill down, and you should see the number of people who liked both colors. So there you go. That's kind of how you can analyze some data that isn't numbers. These are people's favorite colors, and that's one way you can do that in Excel. To visualize it, which is kind of what I'm trying to show you guys how to do, is you can select, for the males, you can just select the colors in the numbers and click on chart. And I don't really like that one. You could do a bar chart or like a column chart. I guess that's what we're at. I mean, I guess that's what it looks like if you have a bar chart. You could do a pie chart. It's not too bad. Anyway, that's for males. You could do another one for females. You don't have to. I'm just going to delete this chart by pressing delete when it's selected. But you could make, if you had smaller numbers of options, like just green, red, and yellow, and you could just make two different, here's how you can make one pie chart. And if I select all the colors and hold control and select the female numbers, so I have those two selected, then I can make a chart for the females. And you could compare them. I think they're going to look pretty much similar. So I don't think they're going to be too useful. I'm going to delete that. And I want to see if I can get them both in the same graph. So I'll have two data series. I'm going to click chart again now that I've selected all the data for both genders. And now you're seeing a side-by-side bar graph, so you can kind of see how males and females compare on each color choice. And I don't know if you can go to pie chart. Maybe you can. I think the other option would be the stacked bar chart. You have two versions of that. This one shows you how many females like the color and how many males, but also the total because they're stacked. You can also go to this 100% stacked, and that doesn't tell you how many of each color were chosen, but for that many you see the percentage that were chosen by females versus chosen by males for each color. So those are just a couple of ways of visualizing the data, ways of comparing two groups, ways of analyzing. So I hope that's helpful. I guess if I would just go to this regular, maybe this one. It looks not too bad. So this is a stacked bar chart that's horizontal. So if you make that graph, that would be good for this table. I think that looks good. All right, for the last table that I'm probably going to go over, and then spring break. This is for the quantitative data. So here I have a set of numerical values. These could be people's weights, they could be anything. But there's some sort of numerical data. And I'm going to go through how you calculate, they're pretty easy, all these things for the values that you have. So the first ones are kind of like ways of summarizing where the middle number is. So the mean um, is an average. It gives you some sense of quote unquote where the center of the set of numbers are. So we'll do that one. All you gotta do is type equals average, open parenthesis, select your data range. I don't have too many in this one. And then there you go. You've got your average. The median. This one's really hard. You're going to press equals, median, select your data range, and then enter. And that gives you a sort of median. So you can sort your data if you want. I guess I will. Data sort range. Will this do it? Yeah, okay. So there you see it sorted. Looks like I have about 25 pieces of information. So maybe somewhere in here, that should be my median. Yep, looks good. Yeah, with a odd number, there should be 12 on this side and 12 on this side of the median. It should be the number in the middle. Standard deviation. This tells you on average how far are all these values from 245. This is the average distance from the middle. That's what standard deviation means. So if you just say equals, it kind of tells you how spread out they are. stdev, you'll notice that there's other ones. So for a population or a sample, this is for a sample that I'm doing right here, which means you're only looking at some in a group and not everybody. Just select your range again. That's it. There's your standard deviation. So these ones are pretty easy. You just type what you want, select the range, and it will do that for you. Now this helps you build something that's called a 5-number summary. So I think I'm going to start with these. So how do I find the minimum value in a range? Well, I just sorted it, so I know it's this one. But you can say equals min, select the range, and there's the minimum value. Max is very similar, equals max. Select the range, and there's the maximum value. We've already done the median, but I'll put that in again, because that's part of the 5-number summary when you describe a range of numbers. What the 5-number summary does is it cuts into quartiles. So just like how the median cut in half, you have half of the numbers were below it and half of the numbers were above it. Well, that's what the median does. Half the numbers will be below it, half will be above it. But the quartiles break them into quarters. So between these two are a quarter of the values, between these two are a quarter of the values, between these two are a quarter, and between these two are a quarter. So that's called the 5-number summary, and it gives you a sense of how they're distributed. So I'm going to do quartile 1, quartile, open a parenthesis. Guess what? We're going to select our range. But this time I'm going to say comma 1, because I want the first quartile, what value cuts off a quarter below it. And that's how you get that. The third quartile, you just type equals quartile, select the range, comma 3. The median is the second quartile, so we've already got that. But this will chop your numbers into quarters, so you can kind of see that there's 50-ish range for the first quarter. Then there's, looks like it's more like 40 difference between the quartile 1 and the median. Small difference between these ones, so there's a large clustering here, and then a wider difference. What is that, like, well, not quite 100, but 80-ish difference between these two. So you can see that the quarters they're kind of bunched here. These values, there's a lot in this range. So that kind of gives you a sense. Other things that you can want to know for quantitative data: what's the range of the numbers? Well, that's going to be the max minus the min. So you just got to say equals and then click those max and min, subtract them. That's the range. That's how widely spread the data is. But that's not always the most useful thing, because there are things called outliers. There are some values that are really, really high and really, really low, which throw the data off. So let me just show you what I mean by that. I'm going to put in a number that's big, and watch what happens to the mean. I'll write what it is right now underneath, and then that's the median, and the range is 184. So I'm going to replace, let's say, one of the last numbers with 9,999. Ridiculously big. I press enter, and you'll see what's happened. The range is, well, that should have changed. I don't know why that didn't change. But you'll see that the mean, the average, is now much bigger because of that outlier, because of that weird case. Nothing else really follows in the data set with that number, but it threw off our average. But notice the median was not thrown off. The median just cares that there's so many below it, so many above it. So the median is what we call resistant to outliers. It doesn't budge, even if some number is really far out away from the middle. The range also is sensitive to outliers. So I'm going to undo, Control Z. I don't want that outlier. But because of that, sometimes we don't want to use the mean. Sometimes you want to use the median, because you're more likely to be like the rest of the numbers than that one freakishly weird number. So just like the median is called robust, it's not sensitive to the outliers like the mean is. Sometimes it's more useful. And likewise, sometimes the range is sensitive to the outliers, but you want something that isn't. So the IQR, that's the one that's not as or that's more resistant to outliers. So that one is just the range of the inner 50%. So from Q1 to Q3. So just say Q3 minus Q1, and that's called your interquartile range. If I again make a 999, the range moves significantly. The IQR doesn't, because what I just explained. So I'm going to undo, and hopefully that made some sense. I guess I'll do this for completeness. So standard dev p, and I will. So there's just a slight difference in which formula you use, depending on if you're dealing with a whole population or a sample, but they're usually pretty close if you got a lot of numbers. But that's how you can do standard deviation. Okay, for the last bit, I thought I would show you some conditional things. So, I mean, you can sum these things. You can figure out how much you have in total. Perhaps you've noticed in this election cycle, certain candidates like to emphasize that such a percentage of all the funds that they raise have come from people who donate below a certain threshold, um, as opposed to above. So I just wanted to show you, if you had a list of people or a list of dollar amounts, how can you look at what percentage came from one size of donation and what percentage came from another. So here we're going to count how many people or how many of these dollar amounts were under 300. And then later I'll count how many were above 300. So we will say equals count if, we've already seen that one before. Select your range. And then hit comma. And then in quotes say less than 300. And that will count only if the number is less than 300. It's counting, it's not adding. So there's 22 values below 300. I can do that again, count if. I'm going to select the other range, or the same range, but this time I'm going to say greater than or equal to 300. And there were only 3 that were over 300. So, so most of the people here gave under 300. But what were the combined dollar amounts? So let's see that. So this is going to be sum if, not count. So here we're not tallying how many, we're adding up how much. So same thing though, less than 300. And so you got over 5,000 from all those 22 people. And this will be sum if, select the same range, comma, greater than 300. And nearly 1,000, so not bad. So that nearly wraps it up. I'm just going to make some visualizations, going to make some graphs, and that should be pretty good. The first thing I'll do is just make a histogram. So select the data, make a chart. There they are. That gives you a sense of how they're distributed. Mostly distributed around 250. Alright, that's a histogram. I'm going to put that off to the side. Then I'm going to make 2 pie charts, and that'll be that. Whoops, I think I drug that. One will be the number of people under, so I'm going to select that and hold control and select that. Hopefully this works. And I'm going to hit pie chart, and there you go. Well, I hit chart. I got a bar chart. So you can see the number of people who gave less than 300 versus the number who gave over 300. Maybe that's impressive, I don't know. You can click pie chart if you'd prefer that. Never mind, that's not seeming to work. There you go. If you switch rows and columns, you can see it as a pie chart. So that's not bad. You can shrink these things. So I'm going to toss this to the side or below for a second. I'm not going to do the same thing, but for the sums. So select those, hold control, select the other 2. Make another chart. Interesting. But I'm going to go to pie chart again. And I'm going to click switch rows and columns. And now, not a huge difference. But you can compare the 2 charts. This is not working. I'm trying to make them exactly equally sized. Whatever. Good enough. So in this chart, you can see that there's a smaller sliver of people who gave over 300. But when you look at percentages, they only represent 12% of the people. But in terms of how much they gave 16% of the total amount of money. Not a big difference there, but um, just a way of making that sort of a comparison visually. Anyway, maybe on March 30th, depending on how this goes. I hope this is working out for you guys and that you're not having trouble with it. If you are, just let me know. I'll try to help you, and if I can't, I at least know that people are having difficulties. I was hoping that Google Sheets would be, I mean, everybody should have access to it. You're just typing and doing what I'm doing. So hopefully you learn some things that you have available to you that you can use. And hopefully it wasn't very hard. And I hope it wasn't too stressful. This was just something that's good for pretty much anybody to know how to use. The stats class is sort of at the point where they might be collecting data and having to analyze it and show people what their data is. So it's good for them. For algebra, you guys should have some introduction to probability and statistics. You should have had it all along the way through your last 3 courses, but that doesn't always happen. But maybe for the March 30th thing, we might look at algebra and functions and graphs of functions and solving them using tables and spreadsheets. So if Excel is working out okay, we might do that. But that'll be for the algebra group. Anyway, I hope you guys are doing all right. Have a great spring break. So again, just make a copy of this file, follow along, make the graphs, submit it, and you have a good one.